Now, we seen in the last video, the dragon, chapter 12. Remember, Revelation goes in order, and it's telling a lot of different stories. It has a lot of different people involved. And it went over Satan and what he wants and what he is striving to do and what he's been doing on this planet. And so chapter 13 starts with, it says, and the dragon stood on the seashore. Well, who's the dragon? It is Satan, and he's standing on the seashore. And the sea always represents humanity and people and many people, and he's standing there. And what does he do? Coming up out of the sea is a beast. So now that you know who the dragon is, he is bringing on a man on the scene, and he's this first beast come. And where does he come from? From the people. Now, exactly where we pinpoint where he comes from, I have an idea, and it is kind of far stretched, but it's just an idea, because it really don't matter where this man comes from. What we have to do is recognize when this man gets here and who he is. But I have an idea, and of course, if we follow the book of Daniel, which is the key to understanding Revelation, in the book of Daniel, it talks about the little horn, right? Because the little horn represents this future world leader. And chapter 7, verse 8, while I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And then if you move further down the chapter, in verse 20, talks of the 3 horns again, and the horn which came up after it, and 3 of the other horns fell. And then we move into chapter 8, which talks about Persia and Greece. And I believe it's not just there to the whole chapter just to center on these 2 empires. It's there to extend our understanding of what the little horn is. And it talks here, of course, a bunch of horns. And it talks of Alexander the Great, and then his horn being broke and 4 horns coming up. Well, if you look here, chapter 8, verse 8, it says the large horn was broken, and in its place there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. And then verse 9, out of one of them came forth a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. Okay, again, it's a little horn. These little horn references are made to who? Antiochus Epiphanes and the future beast, the world leader, future Antichrist. So I believe here it is, a reference to the little horn. He attacks in 3 directions, but he comes out of one of Alexander's kingdoms. Well, who are we talking about here specifically in verse 9? Daniel chapter 8, verse 9, we're talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, and we already went over how that's a forerunner to the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is doing the same thing, comes into power the same way, the way Antiochus did. And if we believe he's a similar person to Antiochus, and Antiochus is the forerunner of what the future world leader will do, then we must believe he comes from the same place. And so we know Antiochus came out of the Seleucid Empire in the northern Iraq, the northern Syria area, eastern Turkey, somewhere in that area. And so I believe this beast, the dragon standing on the seashore, watches the beast come out of the sea, because he comes out of the people, and I believe he comes from this area. And also he's referred to as the Assyrian a little bit. You can look that up. Again, I know it's not strong proof, but it's just my belief. I believe he comes out of that area over there. And then also, there's just little things that get my mind stuck on this, like if you read Revelation, right, chapter 2, the churches. Well, what was the church that had the throne of Satan there? It was in Turkey. So somewhere in that area, I believe this beast coming up out of the sea, this is where he's coming from. And when he comes up, well, let's just take a look what it says, chapter 13. After we already seen the dragon is standing on the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. So Satan is overlooking his man coming out of the people of the earth. And this beast having 10 horns and 7 heads. Now, the 10 horns takes you right back to Daniel, right? That great Romanized world we live in, and had 10 horns. It turns into 10 federation. This beast has 10 federations on it. Satan is behind all of this. Now, it adds something new. It has 7 heads. And we already seen the dragon has 7 heads. That's because these 7 heads represent 7 great powers. Now, we know of 4 of them already. The time Daniel wrote his book, he started at Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, though he never names Rome. People just like to call it Rome. It's more than that. It's our entire world we're living in, the grace period. It is a terrible, terrible beast we live in. It is so controlling. It is so destroying. It makes widows. It makes homeless out of people. It just destroys our lives, this world we're in. Now, the other 2 we'll get to in a minute. It's not that important at this time, because what's important here, it says, on his horns were 10 diadems. Now, the diadems are crowns, so that's individuals. Okay, so these 10 horns are ruled by 10 people. And on his heads were blasphemous names. That's because you worship him and not Jesus Christ. He denies Jesus Christ and exalts himself. It's the same sin Satan fell out of heaven for. Then it said, and the beast which I saw was like a leopard. Now, we're going to read down these. It's going to name every animal that Daniel's talked about, because this terrible empire we live in, this world, is represented by these 4 great empires. And it says it was one like a leopard. That's speed. The beast comes up and he controls the world in like a year and a half. Okay, he's here for the first 3.5 years. He's allowed to trample underfoot, and he controls this world fast. And his feet were like those of a bear. The bear, remember, the bear just went and crushed and pounced 3 empires. And what's the beast do? He crushes 3 empires toward the south, east, and beautiful land. Same thing. It's just like the bear. And his mouth was like the mouth of a lion, right? The lion is Babylon, the ultimate power. Daniel's day, Babylon was the ultimate empire. And here, this is going to be the ultimate empire. So it's all represented and controlled by the same person. And it says, and the dragon gave him his power and his throne and a great authority. See, the dragon, Satan is behind all of this, and he gives this beast his whole authority. And let's just take a look at this beast, just a little more information on him, because we looked at where he comes from. Comes out of this area. We know, according to Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, he comes to power. He makes a treaty with Israel. And it has something to do with rebuilding the temple, because we'll read that in a little bit, how you have to have a temple there in Jerusalem. So that's why I believe 3 federations do not care for this, and it's going to be the Arab-speaking world. They will hate this. They will hate this man for doing it, and he will have to subdue 3 of them. That's what this beast is doing when Satan brings him to power. And just remember, we kind of gone over this, but in Thessalonians, remember, they were very concerned about missing the day of the Lord, the rapture, the second coming, and Paul tells them. Paul has to write to the Thessalonians again, because they're thinking that the day of the Lord has arrived. In chapter 2, right, verse 3, it says, let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first. So after the restraining hand is removed, the apostasy will come first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. So none of this can happen until God removes his restraining hand, the Holy Spirit, and raptures the church. And then this man is revealed. And remember what he's after? He wants to be worshipped above every object and every god, and he wants to take his seat in the temple of God. And in the book of Daniel, remember they talk of the little horn there, Antiochus, and the future prince. And let's see what they have to say about this man. If we look at verse 22, 3, it says, "In the latter period of the rule, when the transgressors have run their course, a king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power, and he will destroy to an extraordinary degree and prosper and perform his will." If you look at 25, "And through his shrewdness he will cause deceit to succeed by his influence, and he will magnify himself in his heart, and he will destroy many while they are at ease, and he will even oppose the Prince of Princes." Now, here is how he takes over. It's not a war. These 10 other federations give him his power. He comes in by deceit, influence, skill. He's skilled in intrigue. This is how this person takes over. So these 10 kingdoms, they are our last group of nations before this sixth empire, the Romanized world, is done for. And it says here in Daniel chapter 7, verse 12, "As for the rest of the beasts," remember, this new Antichrist that comes to power takes over. He is the seventh empire, and he is part of all these four beasts, that characteristics in it. So it says, "As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away," right? So the Greeks, the leopard, the lion, the bear, the Persians, they have no more empire left. They've been conquered. They've been taken out by another empire that Satan's been controlling. And it says, "But an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time." So they are recognized and they are part of this new seventh empire. So you got to, this is what this telling us, is the book of Daniel is the key to Revelation. This future seventh empire on this world, which will be run by the Antichrist when he comes up and attacks three nations, is going to have all the characteristics of these four empires. That's why they tell us this information. So now he comes to power, and what's the first thing he does? One of the first things? Well, Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. He makes a firm covenant with Israel. Now, this covenant is most likely some sort of defense agreement. It's not a peace treaty. He doesn't bring peace to the world. It's a defensive agreement. And I believe three kingdoms do not like this. And let's point out these kingdoms. Remember, because when this little horn arises, he subdues three of them. These three kingdoms over here are going to be all Arab nations, and they don't like that this person made a deal with Israel. Okay, we can all understand that. The hatred between the Arabs and the Israelites has been going on forever and will still continue to go on until this man has to fight him. He will subdue these three nations. And if you go to Daniel chapter 11, verse 36, it talks about the king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god. It's just the same stuff we've been talking about. This is what Satan has his man do, and this is what Satan is after. And then in verse 40, it says, "At the end of the time, the king of the south will collide with him." Remember, he's fighting with three nations. Who's the king of the south? Well, it's Egypt. Those are Arab nations. That federation will fight him. Then it says the king of the north will storm against him. Who's the north? That's the Syrian, Iraq, Turkey, all the Arab nations in the northern area there. They attack him and will fight him. That's another one. And then it says, "And he will enter countries, overflow them, and pass through. He will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall." And then it goes on to say how Moab, Edom, and the sons of Ammon are saved out of that, which is where Israel is being protected by God. We talked about that in the last video. But anyways, it'll list here everything he goes into. So the Arab world around there goes after this guy from the south, the north, all the southern Arabs, all the northern Arabs, and then the beast will enter the beautiful land, which is Israel. So now he enters Israel. He has conquered Israel's enemies. Israel thinks he's the Messiah, great and everything. This takes about a year and a half when the 7-year tribulation start. Remember, the seals have been broke. The trumpets are coming in. So a lot of stuff is happening. A lot of people are dying. But he finally comes to power. He's the seventh empire, and for the next year or so, he's making everything seem pretty darn good, right? And remember, the two witnesses are witnessing in Jerusalem, and the two witnesses aren't able to be killed yet. But now we come to the 3.5-year mark. That's where we're at in chapter 13. The 3.5-year mark is a game changer. The beast coming up out of the sea, the Antichrist, has done all this. He has the world controlled right now. And in the spiritual world, Satan gets kicked out of heaven. What did it say in chapter 12? Woe to the inhabitants of earth, for the devil comes down with wrath, because he knows he has a short time. It's a game changer. So what happens when the devil gets kicked out of heaven and the beast is here on earth? Well, let's take a look. Chapter 13 in Revelation. Now, this is a very controversial area. There's quite a few interpretations of it. This is mine. And again, my proof isn't real strong on it, but this is what I believe. It says in verse 3, I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. It could be a kingdom, but I believe it's a person. People believe this is the Roman Empire, which, remember, it was never named. And they think it fell, Rome fell, and then came back, revived right here at this time as an empire. I don't agree with that. You already know what I believe. It's a Romanized world we are in. This person is the beast who is wounded and dead. Remember, he is imitating. The devil imitates everything Jesus does. That's why the Jews, not only because he conquered their enemies, but they see him die and rise from the dead. They're going to look through all their scrolls and go, oh my gosh, this is our Messiah. He dies probably for 3 days, and then he comes back to life. I believe Satan incarnates him and is now this person who returns back to life. And only one other verse I want to talk about this, and it has to do with Islam. Islam has their beliefs in the end time too, and they believe in 3 figures just like we do in Revelation. They believe in their Savior, the Mahdi. They believe in their prophet, Isa, which is Jesus Christ, and they believe in the Antichrist just like we do, and he's called the Dajjal. And it says in their writings that you will recognize the Dajjal because he will have only one eye. And let me show you what the Judean Bible says about this future prince person. In Zechariah, verse 17, woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. Even our Judean prophets prophesied about an idle shepherd, which is reference to Satan, who will have one eye. So his deadly wound, it says in verse 3, one of his heads. So I believe he was struck in the head. And when he is revived in 3 days, rises again, just like Jesus Christ did, he has one eye. Now, it goes on to say in chapter 3, now remember, Satan was kicked out of heaven. He incarnates as man. He comes back to life. What are the things that happens here now? The game changers? He kills the 2 witnesses. Why couldn't the first beast kill the 2 witnesses? Because I believe it is now Satan possessing this man. He kills the 2 witnesses. And it says the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. Remember, the guy comes back to life. He's still like the Antichrist, but now it's Satan doing it himself. And we'll read something else about that. I have to prove that. And he worshipped the dragon because the dragon gave him his authority, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him? There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words, blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given him, and he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God. Okay, on and on and on. Now, it was also given him to make war with the saints, to overcome them, and authority over every tribe, people, and tongue and nation was given to him. And who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written in the book of life. So it goes on and on. Now, Here he is, Satan. He kills the two witnesses. He's rose from the dead, and he commits the abomination of desolation that Jesus told everybody, the Jews, to look for in Daniel, and what Daniel talked about. He commits the abomination of desolation. And back at Daniel 9, verse 27, but in the middle of the week, that's, remember, the 70th week, the last 7 years of tribulation, in the middle of it, that's 3.5 years, that's where we're at. He will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction. And one that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. So God has this planned to have the Jews follow this beast that shows up in the beginning of tribulation. He makes a covenant with them. He destroys 3 Arab federations. The Jews think he's this great Messiah for them. Then he ends up getting killed. He comes back to life because Satan had got kicked out of heaven from the spiritual world. He incarnates him, comes back to life, and Satan breaks the treaty with the Jews and commits the abomination of desolation and kills the 2 witnesses. This is the game changer. This is Satan now. And this is when I want to bring up, you have to have a temple in Jerusalem, because the abomination of desolation is a horror. It's a complete destruction. It's a horror. And what that means to the Jews is someone has gone into the Holy of Holies. Well, Satan goes in there and proclaims himself God. He has now achieved his ultimate goal, to be worshipped and have the whole world follow him. Now let's go back to 13 and look at another beast that comes out. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. So this man is convincing everybody that he is a prophet of God, and what is he doing? He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in the earth worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come back to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak, and cause as many as to not worship the image to be killed. And he causes all, the small, the great, the rich, the poor, and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Now, you know 666 is controversial also, but Satan comes to power. He commits abomination of desolation. He kills the 2 witnesses. He makes alterations to laws and times, and he has this whole economic system set up that you can't buy or sell with anything without his mark. And he is getting a piece of everybody's money in action, and he's killing anybody who does not want to be involved in this. And this other beast, the false prophet, is aiding him and performing one of the biggest propaganda campaigns in history. When it says, reckon the number of the beast, 666. Now, to me, God's number is 7, right? You have the Holy Trinity. They are perfect. They are 7s. The unholy Trinity, right? Satan, the beast, the false prophet, they are unholy, and they fall short of perfection and God. And so they are number 6. So the 3 6s just represent these 3 people. There's going to be 3 people here that are anything but holy. They fall short of the glory of God. They're labeled 666. Let those who have wisdom understand this. They are not gods, even though they deceive and perform wonders, but they are not in the name of Jesus Christ. And so those who know their God and know Jesus will know that these people are not from God. And so it's said that he went and made war against the saints to destroy Israel and all the rest of the children. And I just want to bring up the Islam thing again, and you can look it up or read it. It's just very fascinating. They believe this beast, they didn't like him for the treaty, and they fought him. But now, I believe, when the beast rises from the dead, even though he may have a darkened eye, I think all that stuff goes out the window, because they have so many different beliefs and hadiths and stuff like that, that it's very different depending on what you want to believe. And I believe they think this guy's the Mahdi, because what's he do? He goes and destroys the temple or commits the abomination. He starts trying to kill them all and kill all the Christians, because it says in the Islamic belief that when they are at their lowest, when they are being oppressed and they are at the point of destruction, which is just what happened to them, the beast destroyed them or subdued all the Arab world, those three horns. They're at their worst, and here shows up the Mahdi, and the Mahdi starts attacking the Jews and the Christians. So I think the Arabs now go, heck yeah, this is our Savior. Then the false prophet comes along. That's Jesus. And according to the Islamic tradition, Jesus kills the Antichrist, the Dajjal form. So I believe the Arabs recognize these two individuals as the Mahdi and Isa, and they follow them. Now, of course, this beast now is Satan incarnate, and they will follow them to destroy all the Jews and Christians, and then go about to convert the entire world to Islam, according to their tradition. Now, Satan's back in power. He has his whole world system set up. Now, chapter 14, chapter 15, we go into another kind of interlude here about bowl judgments and about what's happening in the spiritual world, and that chapter 14 specifically, when it says in verse 14, reaping the earth's harvest, that means the time is done. The earth has reached its ultimate decay, and it's like it's time to reap it and harvest it and wipe it out. And that's the description they give here. Reaping the harvest, reaping the grapes of wrath. You can read all that yourself. The bowl judgments, that's because what does Satan do now that he's in power and he has the whole world in his hands? He goes after Israel, remember, but Israel's being protected. So now he goes after anybody else who still holds the testimony of Jesus Christ. And that's what's going down here. Now, this last 3.5 years is called the Great Terrible Day of the Lord, Jacob's distress. And that's why in Daniel chapter 12, it says, now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. Remember, there's spiritual battles going on, and Michael has to protect Israel. He's the one protecting them out in the wilderness. And there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. Many of those who will sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Daniel's asking, when is this going to happen? And then he's telling them, seal up this prophecy. So there's words here that Daniel's not even allowed to talk about yet. But if you look at chapter 12, verse 11, it says, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, that's what Satan just set up to worship himself, there will be 1,290 days. So it's 3.5 years plus 30 days, and we've already talked about this. We're not sure what the extra 30 days is, but I believe it's the second coming of Jesus Christ, where he comes down to earth, and we'll get into that still. But that's basically another 30 days. So that's what that add-on is. But it's for 3.5 years now that Satan's going to continue here. I know that's a lot to digest here. We had a lot of things happening. Satan gets kicked out of heaven. The abomination of desolation set up. He kills the 2 witnesses. The first beast in the first 3.5 years goes to war. The last 3.5 years, Satan is trying to wipe out anybody who doesn't worship him. So a lot's happening, and then God is throwing the final bowl judgments on earth. And you can read those. They're much of the same stuff. Earth being scorched from all the fighting, I'm sure all the fallout, the darkness, sea turns to blood, the sores. But the sixth bowl is where we'll continue in the next video, and I think the next video will be our last of what our future looks like.